53 bodies have been recovered in Houston area bayous within Houston city limits since 2023. The annual totals have accelerated sharply. In 2023, we had 9. In 2024, there were 20. And so far in 2025, they recovered 24. And in 2025 alone, mid September saw a cluster of about 7 in under 3 weeks. And October 8th, they recovered 3 more bodies from White Oak Bayou. Of those 53 cases, 3 were classified as homicide, and there's been arrest in those. 15 were deemed accidental, so a drowning, maybe something to do with substance abuse. Some of them were homeless, and we think it was just an accidental situation, being on the streets. At least 3 were confirmed suicides, so that takes that out of the unknown spectrum. But that leaves about 23 considered undetermined, and there's also about 9 which are pending further forensic investigation. So that means roughly 60% are, we don't know what happened yet, 60% of those 53 bodies. Now, on October 9th, 3 more victims were identified at the White Oak Bayou. That's Seth Joseph Hansen, he was 24, Arnulfo Alvarado was 63, and someone named Michael Miller. I don't have any more details on him, but these counted as the 16th for 2025 for the HBD jurisdiction. So one of the complications is, even though it's in Houston city limits, there's jurisdictional between Harris County and Houston, depending on exactly where it happens. And so that always makes things difficult in investigations when it crosses jurisdiction lines. But there are persistent forensic ambiguities that are causing people to speculate, right? Nearly 4 in 10 are undetermined or pending, and these cases lack a conclusive cause of death or circumstances, which is, people are starting to speculate about a possible serial killer. Confirmed homicides are rare in this data set, and many of the bodies show no obvious trauma. There's a diversity of victims, which, a lot of times a serial killer will have a certain type in mind, and he always goes after that type, and he kills them in the same way, and he dumps them in the same places. And there's a lot of diversity in these 53 bodies, from age to gender, ethnicity. It's a broad geographic dispersion compared to how a serial killer would do it. Houston's got a lot of bios. The backlog and limitations of forensic resources are making this even tougher. There's many investigations that are open, under review, never seem to get closed out. That's that ambiguity factor that's causing people to speculate. So right in the middle of all this, you know, preceding all these bodies showing up in 2019, there was something that hit the HPD really hard, and it was the Harding Street raid. And there was a Houston Police Department detective named Gerald Goines. He secured a no-knock warrant based on fabricated evidence and was later convicted of felony murder, and is considered a landmark case in this area. Goines' misconduct was not isolated. Over his tenure, he faced multiple internal discipline claims, evidence mishandling, false reporting, even as he accrued commendations, right? So after his conviction in October of 2024, he got a 60-year sentence. Downstream effects included a mass revisiting of all past HBD case files, dismissal of hundreds of prosecutions, and 489 murder case drops from 2019 to 2023. Many of these were dropped because of evidentiary failures, right? We think the evidence wasn't exactly up to snuff. Heightened public skepticism towards Houston Police Department's official narratives, particularly in high stakes or unusual investigations, is at a peak now. People just do not believe them because of all this. In early 2025, charges tied to overtime fraud against 8 former HPD officers associated with the Goines era narcotics squad were dropped due to lack of evidence, intensifying perceptions of institutional shielding. So, Mayor John Whitmire and Chief No Diaz repeatedly state that no evidence exists of a serial killer, and they counsel people not to speculate. But in a climate of eroded trust, many interpret blanket denials as deflections or cover ups. Social media is alive with theories, including rehashed ones like the debunked smiley face killers narrative that has swept the nation at times. Some retired external law enforcement voices, like Sergeant Joseph Guillen, publicly suggest that the volumes in the clustering demand deeper review. Victim advocates and relatives are pressing for transparency, timelines, raw forensic data, demographic breakdowns. This gap in disclosure is stoking further distrust. And the bodies keep piling up. That's the problem. Um, the escalation in bodies is real and it's alarming and it's happening on a regular basis, and it demands a serious investigation. However, because of the lack of strong forensic correlations, the leap to a sweeping serial killer narrative is probably a little bit early. It doesn't fit a lot of the modes, and we just don't have the evidence that points towards it. But the Goins scandal functions as a lens through which every denial or typology choice is colored. Citizens now default to skepticism across Houston. The distrust of HBD is at an all-time low. These undetermined cases, the pending reports, it looks like incomplete data, and that's the kind of fertile ground for rumor, conspiracy, and fear. Word out there, when people are talking, they're like, hey, we think there's a serial killer on the loose in Houston. Be careful where you go. Institutional risk is that these repeated cover-ups, opaque processes where you can't really understand what's going on, and selective disclosure have eroded the legitimacy of the HPD, and it's compromised cooperation from the public. If the public doesn't trust you, you think they're going to cooperate with you? And, policing, community policing, it is a partnership between the community and the police department, but things have to be good going both ways. So, 53 bodies since 2023 in the Houston area. That's a big number. 4 in 10 are undetermined or pending. That's a striking statistic. The Goines era did a lot of damage. Wasn't part of the Bayou series, right? But it's an example of HPD's prior misconduct, and why public trust is low. There is an absence of proof right now that there's a serial killer. An absence of proof is not proof of absence. So that doesn't mean that there's not a serial killer, but extraordinary claims do demand extraordinary evidence. And that's why we're calling for an investigation. The community is calling for a more intense, transparent investigation and to understand what's going on, because this is real and active. People are dying every week. We need really a forensic level of transparency, sharing anonymized data, even if we don't assign it to a certain name, just so people can understand in case patterns do emerge that, hey, there are certain types that this person possibly is going after. And I think that, we have to admit that the damage that social media can do, as I'm coming to you on social media, right? There's so many conspiracy theories, and it's always in the absence of real information. When someone's not telling us what's really going on, that's when the conspiracy theories kick in. And in this day and era, look, man, people get their news from social media. And so if social media is pumping out these conspiracies, that means people out there are believing this. So Houston has a dual crisis here. One is the human lives being lost, 53 bodies lost, and we don't understand all the hows and whys. And the other crisis we're having is governance and accountability. Like, we need someone to come into HBD and heal this gap and bring us back to truth and justice. And at the same time, we need to investigate these murders and see if we can't understand, how it's happening. Now, look, of the 53, some of them, suicides, accidental drownings, you have to rule those out. But we're still talking about a big number and a steady number of people showing up dead on the bayous of Houston, Texas, and we don't know why.